you record audio for any purpose, chances are you want it to be heard. You want to attract the largest audience possible who can hear your message. That's where we come in. We're cyberears.com, a revolutionary internet service that will host your audio files and help you promote and track its popularity. Considering hosting a podcast to the world? We have all the automated tools to make the process as simple and easy as it can be. No technical mumbo-jumbo to work out. Cyberears.com does all the work for you. You record it, we take care of the rest. So don't delay. Go to cyberears.com today and register for a free trial account. Upload your audio files and get heard. With cyberears.com, it's your audio on your terms.
Paratopia, welcome to another exciting edition of Paratopia. Wait, do I have to say that twice in order for that to work? I do, don't I?
Well, we can do it in stereo. It's okay.
In any event, I think as most of you know, if not all of you, the UFO Magazine article with one Emma Woods, written by yours truly, is on stands now. It is the cover story, and in an odd synchronicity, maybe, or just a gift from the gods, perhaps, or something, I don't know what, Emma was going through her tapes, and she found yet another piece of interesting audio that she didn't remember at all, which we're going to play for you in a moment. And Jeff, I'm thinking we don't even need to set it up, really, other than to say that
it was sent to a slew of people.
Who's sent to a slew of people. Well, if you still think that his work is valid after this tape, if the panties thing didn't set off an alarm bell or two, I think this one will have to do the trick for any stalwarts to at least reassess the value of his work where the abduction phenomenon is concerned. How's that for politically correct?
That's pretty PC.
All right. So, without further ado, here is that piece of tape.
Years ago, maybe I told you this, I had this idea of buying the person I was working with a chastity belt.
Yeah.
Maybe this would be the time to get one. You can't take it off. It's got a little lock and a key. And right where the vaginal opening is, it's got a couple of nails sticking across.
Right.
It's a dead stopper, no doubt about it. They actually have them. I found them online. I started. This woman was having all this trouble. This was many years ago. I thought, God, what we need is just a blockage here. Now you can't wear it all the time, obviously, and this and that, but it has its place in a sense. I mean, you can, and it does work with a key.
Right.
And of course, if you were to put the key somewhere where they can't get at it, and you can prevent them from, they can always just kind of tell you, to get the key, but it does sort of throw a kink into their plans.
Yeah.
It's not like you're totally accessible at all times. It makes them work a little harder.
Yeah.
And it would probably piss them off. Everybody that's possible.
Yeah.
But it's something to think about. I can get one of these things online, I think.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some, they had some, maybe they still have in Philadelphia. This was so many years ago, I don't even know. They have these sex shops, And I went into one that specialized in bondage dominance.
Oh, yeah.
Place that I frequented quite often. and I was looking for the one thing, I was looking for chastity belts, and they had all these dungeon type whips and chains and this and all this, and here they had a chastity belt in there.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Yeah.
It might be worth a try. I mean, because what he's saying is, there's lots of us that can come around. And what he's saying is we can just use you anytime we want.
That's what he was saying. It was really hard for me to get my head at the words for it, because it was all like, he wasn't saying it, he was conveying it, but it was like that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's something. It'll get them all fired up. It'll get them all angry and this and that. But at the same time, it'll give you a chance to fight back a little bit. I'll look into it and see what I can find. So, I mean, I can send it to you if you don't want it. You don't have to use it and send it back.
Yeah.
And we're back. So that was that.
Right. Moving on.
I mean, there's nothing really that needs to be said, right?
Yeah.
Ever again, really.
That's true.
All right.
I need a shower.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
God. Okay.
What am I doing here?
Yeah, I don't know. So what else we got here? Well, this is the first week, as everyone should know, of the premium having gone premium, which means that anyone listening on iTunes or any source other than paratopia.net will be hearing a roughly half-hour version of the show, and everyone else will be hearing the full thing. So I thank those of you who have subscribed and or purchased the show separately, because, there are people doing both.
Right, because there's, the special limited edition single.
Yeah, collect
with
them all.
With different cover and pop-out folders.
But before we get going, I do want to just make one thing clear, because I don't think we have made this clear. And in fact, I asked somebody on our message board if it was clear, and it wasn't, that with the subscription, when you get Paratopia magazine in January, that's a real magazine that we're going to be selling. We're going to be selling it as a PDF,
right,
to the outside world, but for subscribers, of course, you get it for free. So it's not just a newsletter, and I think we had said it's not just a newsletter, but I don't think we really made the impression that it wasn't just a newsletter, because, like I said, at least one person has told me they still thought it was basically a newsletter.
Right.
But it's not. It's going to be as if an actual magazine with real writers from the wonderful world of ufology and science and human consciousness and all of that. Maybe not this first issue so much, but eventually, it'll be just like the show. Is there a better way to say that?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I think the first issue is going to be pretty kick-ass, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, already, we're talking, I don't know. It's just, I like to spoil things, but should we just save it? Like, who's writing for this?
Give them a couple. It's fine.
Well, I'll tell you who's on board. Phil Imbrogno, George Hansen, Nick Redfern, Emma Woods, Carol Rainey, and I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
So,
this ain't no newsletter.
Yeah, this ain't no newsletter. This is real articles about real things.
Right.
Or real articles about fake things.
And I will ensure that it looks every bit the part. So,
indeed.
So yeah, that'll be that. So if you buy the single episodes, you don't get the magazine. If you do the monthly, you will definitely get that for free, but we will be selling it as a separate entity.
Indeed. So without further ado, our guest, you can find him on the internet at www.waterufo.net. That's all one word, waterufo.net. His name is Carl Feindt. Perhaps you've seen him on the History Channel. And he's got a new book out called UFOs in Water, which you can learn all about at waterufo.net. And I'm kind of excited to have him here, Jeff, because we've not dealt with USOs, submerged UFOs, and water specifically. So I was kind of excited to go in a slightly different direction with the ufological stuff that we do on the show here.
Yeah, we're UFO water versions.
Yes. We're UFO water versions.
I forgot we left that theme. Never mind.
Release the Kraken. Paratopia, please welcome our very special guest, Mr. Carl Feindt. Carl, thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, sir.
Now, it's funny because we talk about UFOs and all that sort of stuff all the time, but we've never really specifically dedicated a show to USOs. And in fact, until recently, until I found out about your work, I didn't realize anyone actually sort of parsed that out and just sort of focused on that. So what made you decide to focus on USOs?
For the same reason that you just gave. The last book written on the subject was Ivan T. Sanderson's book called Invisible Residents. He had about 260 cases in his book, and but the problem was he didn't go into the physics of it. He, touching water and what it did with water. His main concern was we were cohabitating this planet with aliens. And I don't buy that. But in any event, the reason I got into it is I had some aeronautical engineering when I was younger, and an airplane hitting water, it would be smashed to smithereens, at a speed. And so the fact that these guys do it so easily just confounded me. And I said, I've got to do something since nobody else is doing it. So that was the whole idea of getting this whole, trying to get all these cases together so that it would work better,
Mm-hmm.
Carl, I'm curious. You say you don't necessarily buy into what I guess these days is being called the crypto-terrestrial theory, which is that aliens are here, living under the water, have probably lived here since before we lived here. So I'm going to cut right to the chase. What do you put down to all that? I mean, what do you think that the USOs represent?
They, I believe, are an alien race. From somewhere else in space. We're kind of the only planet in this solar system that has liquid water on its surface. So therefore, it's kind of convenient if they're passing through, to stop at this kind of refueling station. If not refueling station, that's bad, actually. If they need water for any particular reason, we're right here. We have salt water, we have fresh water, and in abundance. So for them to stop by, pick up a little water, and then move on is one thing. I also have a thing about, in my book, is about abductions, and in that, the abductees are actually looking out of the window while the UFOs are underwater. So to me, it's just like another medium to them. It's not a big deal, and so I really am interested in this.
That's actually interesting. That was going to be something that I asked you about, which is that you include on your website material on abductees. And so if you've got these aliens that are coming here for our water, I mean, do you, I don't know, sort of piece together why it is that they would need to abduct people in the first place?
No, I really don't have any information on that. Of course, that's more the realm of Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs.
Well, I don't know if you got the newsletter, but not anymore.
Sorry?
Their work has been questioned as of recently.
Oh, it has? I haven't heard a word about it. Damn.
Yeah.
We have detailed files.
That's right. If you pick up this month's new UFO magazine, you can sort of read all about the dismantling of David Jacobs' work. But okay, nevertheless, so what is it that is specific about USOs as opposed to UFOs in terms of evidence that, that points to a reality in a way that UFOs don't seem to? In other words, there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of good ground trace evidence for UFOs outside of, marks on the ground, that sort of thing. Is there more to USOs?
Oh, there's a great deal more. You're going to get the book. The trouble is yes, you're right. There's no marks. There's no trace, and that water keeps moving it or diluting it. All right, but the thing that is a physical trace is what it does to water. If you see a UFO waving around the breeze up high, okay, what is it doing to the air? Do you see anything? No, you just see the UFO bouncing around. But if that UFO is on top of water or coming out of the water, going into the water, it's doing things with the water. That's where your trace is. And that's what I brought out in the book. There's actually a field around the UFO. It cooks water. It turns it to steam, mist, whatever you want to call it. And there's a lot to be learned about UFOs through water, which has never been. That one of the problems I have with cases is that I'm kind of like a garbage pail picker. You know, I get one here on this newsletter, one in that journal, one in this magazine, and I have to keep searching all the time to find the few cases that are written, because everybody kind of, you know, pooed water off to the side. You know, it's kind of like abductees were originally. You know, there's no such thing as abductees. But now, with what I've discovered, it's pretty definitive as far as what it does to water and how it does it. So there. By the way, I hate the term USO. Unidentified submerged object. If it's unidentified and submerged, you can't call it really a UFO. That's the reason I gave it the term of USO. But if it comes out of the water and flies away, or if it's flying and goes into the water, it is a UFO.
Carl, I'm curious. What about this phenomena that you've come across more or less leads you to mechanical craft or flesh and blood aliens in that sense? I mean, what's basically led you to that point?
Oh, well, like I say, it's a physical presence. What it does to water is physical. Mm-hmm. And so, therefore, it's a machine. It's not a three-dimensional thing, I'm not three-dimensional. I meant multi-dimensional. It's not a hologram. It's a physical craft. It splashes water. It plows water. It does a whole lot of different things. But the trouble is their physics is very much higher than ours, and the field around the UFO operates differently than we conceive of a field. It rotates. And that field is what causes the water to separate from the craft. The water never gets to the craft while the field is on. Now, you can turn the field off, and the water will get onto the craft itself. And it won't harm the craft, because it's evidently done it in the East River with Bud Hopkins. But there are a lot of physical ramifications of what it does to water to prove that it is a craft. So I have no doubt about it.
And you've no doubt come across the reports of, for instance, U.S. Navy guys coming forward and saying that they've had what in the UFO world is deemed the cigar-shaped craft entering the water and literally watching the water engulf not the object itself, but engulf something around it. That in effect, the water is not even touching the craft itself.
Yeah, I have one Italian case that's on that website, and in it the people are saying, these are fishermen, they're saying that they saw the thing come out of the water and hover above the water, just above the water. Well, the field is still below the UFO as well. You know, it's totally around it, but it's still, part of it is underwater, you can't see it. So they've got a hole in the water. And then one of the guys says it gave the impression that was a cushion of air between the UFO and the water, holding it back. You know, the cushion of air was holding the water back. Right. It's not a cushion of air. There's no blowing of air. It's the field that's holding it. The thing is, the field's invisible in the daytime, so you don't see it. If it was at nighttime, it'd probably have some kind of a glow, and you would see the glow, probably not the UFO. But in any event, it's the field that is restricting the UFO, the water from touching the UFO. Now, the field is important because it's not only a thing to hold water back, it's also, this is a space vehicle, right? Now, just like we do with aircraft, you turn on your radar set, you look ahead, you see another airplane coming, and you avoid it because of the radar bouncing, the signal back to you. Well, I don't know what kind of radar they may have. It's probably more advanced than ours. But in any event, they can probably manipulate their craft around anything coming towards them. But when you're talking about all these micrometeorites in space, those pebbles are coming at you like bullets. Well, you can't avoid those as well as you can large rocks, asteroids. And you have to have another medium to keep yourself safe. that field rotates for that purpose. It's also an extremely high-energy field. Like I said, it cooks water. And what it does is it moves whatever it hits. The things that hit the field are moved instantly to the rear of travel of the UFO. So it's a safety device as well as, more than anything else. It's a safety device. I mean, of course, we have gunfire. That was in, Richard Haynes' book, UFOs of the Fifth Kind, where people shooting guns at it. And I have one case on the website there, the Antilles incident, where they actually fired a cannon at a UFO. And I kind of got the guys up there a little angry, and they they kind of sought revenge for that. I'm not going to tell you, but you can read the entire book on my website. It's not mine; it's somebody else's. But he died a long time ago, and so I kind of adopted it. In any event, like I say, it's a safety field, and it's not meant to ward off gunfire and stuff, but it sure does help when they're in our atmosphere.
Has there been any effect on aquatic life, and if so, what have the studies been on that?
Not studies per se. I have one case where dead fish were taken in for, if you want to call it an autopsy or whatever, but they came up with the fact that they said the swimming gland had ruptured. And somebody I know, an ethologist, that told me that what they're probably referring to is a gland in the fish that holds oxygen and keeps it in a vertical mode, up and down. It's kind of like pulling it up to the top. And those glands were ruptured. That's the only case that there was an investigation of the fish. But I have a lot of cases of dead fish. As a matter of fact, Shag Harbor, I was with Chris Stiles up in Shag Harbor, and he was doing a presentation both for us, the tourists, and for the media. And he finished the thing up, and he says, "Oh, by the way, folks, a week after, all sorts of dead fish started coming up on the shore." Well, the Shag Harbor is pretty large, and I guess dead fish coming to the surface and drifting with the tide, would take a while to get in. But I also have dead ducks, and I have 2 dead human beings, as a matter of fact. So, yes.
Dead. Is there a story behind that?
What, 2 human beings?
Yeah.
The story is don't go swimming with UFOs. But no, the thing that happened was they had a crash. I forget the country, Brazil or something like that, off the shore in they didn't know whether it was an airplane or a UFO, so they sent down a buoy, a marker to anchor to the place. Well, 2 divers who were supposedly the best in the neighborhood went down to investigate it. They came back up, and they said they couldn't get near the UFO because the water was too hot. Again, the field in operation. So in any event, that was the last I heard about it until days later. They found their bodies on rocks, had been washed ashore, and they were both dead and naked. Of course, when you're in the water and you're dying, you bloat, and that would have ripped their swimming gear off, I guess. But, yes, it's dangerous to go into the water with a UFO. It's probably an electrical field of some sort, very high power, and it's a possibility of I don't know for sure how it would affect the human, but there's a possibility of electrocution. There's several things you could say it might be, but we don't have the bodies now to do an autopsy on or anything like that. People don't think of these things when they have a UFO. Most of the time, it's ridicule and everything else that's thrown at you. So it's kind of hard to do anything in a research vein that way unless somebody does it very accurately.
Carl, I'm curious, in all of the studies that you've done and all the cases that you've looked at, what would you say is the closest proximity that someone has gotten to a submerged object of this type?
What proximity? Right on top.
Really?
Yeah, there's one case I have in the book. It's called Field in Reverse. They can reverse the field. They can turn off the field. They can do anything they want with the field. Actually, the field in reverse is excellent for going into the water because you avoid a huge impact with it. In any event, in this one particular case, the guy not only touched it, he gave a description. He said it didn't feel like metal. It felt like cement or sand. And he said you could feel a suction coming in from the top. And then later on, he went back under the UFO after he got some more air. And he said it was being expelled at the bottom. So it's kind of like my field rotation, in from the top and then back out of the bottom, except in my normal mode, what I call the normal mode, it's out of the top and back into the bottom. But in any event, he was right under the UFO. He said it was 3 feet between the UFO and the sand. So you talk about being close. Man, this guy touched it.
Is there a certain sound associated with UFOs coming up out of the water?
No, but what you're doing is you're making it a different craft. That's what I hate about USOs. Every time you talk USOs, they're saying, "Oh, that's that other thing." You know, no, it's the same damn thing. It's a UFO, which they do is hum. Sometimes, if you hear them, they hum. But normally they're very silent. Of course, that's probably due to the matter of distance. You know, how far away are you? And you don't hear it, and how close is it when you do hear the hum? So, no, there's they make noise, but not a heck of a lot of it.
Mm. And how many times over the course of general history of the study of these things do we have, I don't know, we often hear about these stories of pilots either chasing or following after these types of things. I mean, do we have anything from micro subs to nuclear subs to the USS whatever in extraordinarily close proximity to these things, possibly firing on them? What's been the reaction to that kind of involvement? I mean, how deep is that gone? Is there as much of that as there is when they're in the air?
Now, well, first of all, submarines are kind of blind except for sonar. Okay,
right.
So you're not going to see anything while you're underwater. Over the water, yes, there's been a lot, and a lot of radar returns. Now, if they're make-believe, you wouldn't get a radar return, right? Of course, in my section on radar and sonar, I also proved that with the field in reverse, you wouldn't get it on radar. I got a lot of cases where it says that people were watching it, but radar kept coming back and saying we have no return on it. Well, that's the field interfering with the radar beam. In one case, if it's in the normal mode, it's kicking the radar beam back to the receiver. But when it's in reverse, it's going up. And so when the radar beam hits it, it may be deflected, but it's still going in the same direction, up. So therefore, it's never returned to the receiver, and the craft is kind of in radar invisible, you might say. And that might apply to sonar as well.
Have we seen, that kind of firing, lobbing a shell at one of these things or shooting at it with a mounted gun on some of these ships? I mean, what's been the reaction of these things, number one? And number two, have they ever fired back?
Yes, and that's, again, that case I told you, on my left-hand column, it just says book. When you go down to that part that says other things of interest, book is the Antilles incident, and it's by a very good researcher, Donald R. Todd. He died, and me and Jan Aldrich were trying to get his papers. And the thing is, that book is actually fiction in a way. He, on the inside cover, says it's fiction only in the fact that the ship's number, which is 0000, doesn't exist. The place where the incident occurred doesn't exist. The names of the crew were changed. And the whole purpose was to protect the commander who was giving Donald Todd the whole story about the case. Now, in this commander is sent into the Atlantic or somewhere and told to go to certain coordinates. Well, they go to the coordinates, and the commander says, well, what am I looking for? He says, you'll know when you see it. So anyway, he goes to the coordinates, and sure enough, there's this UFO bouncing around on the water. Well, they first go towards it, and then it submerges, so they drop a depth charge on it. Welcome to Earth, aliens.
Right.
So, in any event, They couldn't get it that way, and then the UFO moves off underwater, and they see it near the surface somewhere else. So they turn the ship towards where it's surfaced, and they try to ram it with the ship. Well, a UFO realizes these guys are wacko, and up in the air he goes, try to catch me up here, Well, they do with the cannon. I described that before. And they took 2 shots at it, and it hit the field. And they said the first thing that happened was sparks as it hit the field. Now, again, this is a rotating high-energy field. It's like putting an axe on a spinning, a grind wheel. And you have sparks coming off of it. Then the shell exploded, and twice. So needless to say, these guys upstairs, they were kind of ticked off at these guys in the boat. I'm sure they're getting a concussion, if nothing else, from the explosion of the shell. And so next thing, they fire a ray down towards the ship. And it just happened to be that the ship was turning at that moment, and it grazed the metal and seared the metal straight down. Now, had that hit the ship straight on, it could have sunk it. It was melting the metal. So they've got a means of retaliating if they want to, but they rarely do. They play games with the Air Force, chase them off this way and then that way and around them. I think this guy's name was Jacobs or something like that had Atlas missile. He was supposed to photograph Atlas missiles from all different angles on takeoff to make sure that if there were any explosions, they knew what was happening. Well, it turns out that they called him in the next day and said, "What are you doing, playing games?" And he says, "What are you talking about?" So they showed him the film, and here's this Atlas missile moving at thousands of miles an hour with a UFO walking around it and pushing bright beams of light into the Atlas missile, which eventually went off course and it got destroyed. So, these guys are, they are very good.
Are there different shapes of UFOs or USOs reported, and if so, do they correlate to different bodies of water or different parts of the world?
No. A UFO is a UFO, and like I say, USO I hate because that implies a different craft. And what you see in the skies is what goes into the water as well.
So people report triangles as well?
Triangles. I have several cases of triangles. I've got several of the what you call submarine-type shape or cylinder. I have, what's that thing, the acorn thing, like Kecksburg. I have a small one that's a very good case, Poland. And they come in all shapes and sizes, but they have, like I say, a protective field around all of them. So they're not worried about water. They can go any shape they can go in. They're protected all over.
Carl, I'm curious. I live very, very close to a place that is, at least in UFO circles, is known for its submerged UFOs or UFOs coming out of the water, which is Loch Raven Reservoir. Yeah. Yeah, I'm about 15 minutes away. And over the years, I've interviewed a number of people that have seen some very strange things there, not all of which pertain to UFOs or USOs. But in particular, I wanted to ask you about October 26, 1958, when we had Alvin Cohen and Philip Small, which to my knowledge is probably the two guys who first cited something weird around Loch Raven Reservoir. And they said that their object was egg-shaped and was located as you drive into the dam. I don't know if you've been there or not. You're in Delaware, if I remember correctly.
In Delaware, but I was called into a case in Loch Raven.
Okay.
You want me to do the story on it?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, well, first of all, Loch Raven was already Richard Hall's territory for the 1958 case that was there.
Right.
Okay, so you already have the situation. Now, that's I believe, bridge number 1, if you look at a map. I'm
correct.
Sure. In any event, bridge number 1, they had cars at both ends coming and going over that bridge that saw this UFO hovering above the bridge. Well, the thing is, there was a guy in Maryland that they had an anniversary type thing in the newspaper saying X number of years ago this was a sighting at the Loch Raven Dam. So anyway, this guy went off to a friend of mine, Keith Chester, who actually wrote another good book by the name of Strange Company about UFOs, Foo Fighters. In any event, he called me and said, Carl, I'd like you to help me with this case since you've done interviews. I've done cases. And he says, would you come to Maryland and give us a hand? So I did. And this guy had gotten confused. The anniversary issue of the Loch Raven UFO sighting was in 58. His was in 53.
Oh, okay.
Bingo. Now, where? Bridge number 1, same bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, he and his friend were going on a date to some college nearby there, in any event. And so anyway, the car stalls out just close to Bridge 1. And the one guy says, you're not supposed to run out of gas now after we pick up the girls, you know.
Right.
in any event, next thing they look over towards now this is nighttime now. They're looking over towards the water, and bang, there's this big UFO hovering over the water and sucking up water, which again is a part of my story about the UFO physical influences. In any event, the one guy runs up an embankment on his left, and the other guy goes almost on the guardrail, and there's a steep drop-off into the water after that, so he had to hold on to the guardrail, I guess. But they were terrified. Well, the UFO finally leaves, and they try to get back to the car, and the wires are fried. So in any event, they had to wait for the cops that do the patrol around the dam, and they got picked up. And next thing, the men in black, well, they weren't the men in black, but they were civilians in suits and not police officers, gave them questions separately. They questioned them separately. And finally let them go, but with a warning that you don't talk about this, again. Right. And it's twice. I didn't hear about another one. You said there was another one in 58?
Well, there was one in 1958, which was the egg-shaped craft, the same bridge, which is literally the first bridge. Well, when you come off of the main road, it's actually the last bridge before the dam, but the way I usually go, it's the first bridge past the dam.
Yeah, that was the hill one then, wasn't it? Richard Hall.
Richard Hall probably was involved in that one. I mean, I had one. I would say it's probably been 15 to 16 years ago. A man and a woman were near Bridge 1. I had just crossed over it. As you cross over Bridge 1 on your left-hand side is what amounts to an island. When the water raises and the dam is closed, that island gets cut off from its sandbar attachment to the land. And as a rule, it's kind of the place to go, A, drink beer, 2, smoke dope, or have sex with your girlfriend when you're a youngin'. And they were out there, and of course, I think he was 24, she was 28. And they were just taking a walk and not partaking in any particular illegal or legal activities, just walking. They saw a very large, what he described as at least as big as a Volkswagen, very spherical light that seemed to have dimension to it, rose up out of the water not more than about 50 feet from the land bar. And he said that it did not disturb the water in any way whatsoever. It made no sound whatsoever, but it came up out of the water, approached them, or he said it seemed to get closer, and as it got closer, I guess the way he explained it to me was instantaneous acceleration, which I've heard over and over and over the past 24 years. Yeah. And it exited over their heads, and the only sound that was made was the trees that are on this little patch of land gently blew, but not by any stretch to the notion of the speed at which this thing should have displaced air. And I can't tell you how many people have seen everything from green glowing objects there, nondescript shape, to objects in the water barely being covered by water. Everything from, I've got written down here from the notes I had, yellow, purple, blue, green, and amber. all of those. One of them in the shape of a like a Celtic cross shape, which I thought was really weird. But that area in general is a hotbed for all sorts of things.
Well, keep in mind now, that's fresh water, right? Am I mistaken?
Well, it's a man-made dam, yeah. So it's there's literally what I find the most interesting, and this is why I asked about Loch Raven in particular, not only because of my history there, but where most of the UFO sightings happen in Loch Raven is to the left of the bridge is a city that is, well, a town that literally was abandoned, evacuated, and then the dam ensued. So you've literally got buildings down underneath the water there. Whether or not they're still standing, I have no idea. But the foundations certainly are there. That is a man-made dam. And there were houses, and there was a school. I know there was a school underneath there, talking to the locals. So that's what I find really interesting about that, is that down underneath that water is evidence of us, which is kind of
looking for housing.
I just thought it was. I think it's kind of interesting, and we've talked a lot about different connections to UFOs and not the least of them being the extraterrestrial hypothesis, which I have to tell you, just with all due respect, I'm not a big fan of that. But the notion of what one of our other guests has conveyed on a couple episodes now, which is the notion of chaos and discord and change surrounding objects appearing, disappearing, coming up out of the water, what have you. There always seems to be some sort of connective tissue between paranormal events, and Loch Raven certainly is no exception in that regard.
Yeah, well, I realize that. Like I said, I interviewed the man himself, and he was very adamant about what happened. Unfortunately, I couldn't go further with the investigation. I wanted to take him down to the dam so I could get a view, point this direction, do that, whatever have you. But he had the lung disease to start with, and he smoked very heavily. So as the year passed from winter, I was going to get him in the spring, but he had died before then.
Right.
In any event, what you're talking about, not moving, the UFOs, it doesn't appear to be moving water at all,
right,
is very common. Again, there's a lot of people who've seen holes in the water, and of course that's the field under the UFO when it's very close to the water. It's holding the water back, so they assume it came out of a hole, but there's no hole. It's just a depression of the craft pushing on the water. With the field in reverse, okay, you got to picture this thing coming out of the bottom and going up to the top. Now it comes out of the bottom. It's pushing down on the water, then it's rotating to the side of the UFO, which is, again, pushing water away and then rotating up past the UFO. So you have a moving force that's constant, 360 degrees. So when this thing hits the water, it moves the water. It doesn't just hit the water.
Right, there's no resistance. Right, no resistance whatsoever. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, it slips in like it's tissue paper or something. It goes
right.
It's all explained in the book about how it works. It's got a lot of diagrams and stuff, but it's so easy to realize that it is nothing but physics. There's nothing strange and mysterious. Yes, the technology is mysterious. I mean, how do you power something like that, Especially where some of these things are way down in the bottom of the ocean somewhere with a lot of pressure that submarines can't get to, and yet they can resist the pressure. There's one heck of a physics behind their craft, I'll tell you that.
Is there any place in the ocean or in any fresh body of water that would be sort of an oceanic UFO hotspot that would imply a base of some sort?
No, I hate the Bermuda Triangle thing. History Channel once had a thing about Lloyd's of London. And Lloyd's of London had said on the program that they could draw a triangle on any body of water, oceans, I'm talking about, any ocean area, and they could come up with the same kind of figures about sunken ships and missing airplanes. So this whole Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Triangle, they're all kind of buy, sell book type thing. To me, it's a bunch of garbage. Do they go to certain places? Perhaps. Argentina had something going where they thought they had a base nearby because they was frequently seen so often going into the water. It's rare you see them coming out of the water because you're not prepared for it. But if you see something in the sky diving, then you know it's there, so you're on that. But no, I'm not for hotspots. They might in my abductee part of the book, I have water and bases, and there are, I believe, bases underwater, but not the what do you call it? The movie.
The Abyss.
The Abyss. No, not an abyss. Not one of these the community type things. It's more like a military type of setup. It's very plain, very not primitive, but plain living quarters. Where they can rest or something like that. I don't see this as any kind of a cohabitation. No way. It's just like a resting point. As a matter of fact, that the person who was talking about it said there were multiple craft underneath in this, what you might call a hangar underwater. It's actually a cavern in the water. So, no, yes, they are underwater, but no, they don't live here. They go off into space again.
I'm curious what your feeling is when someone would say to you, and I'm going to say it to you, how many of these cases do you believe have the potential to be top-secret military projects?
This has been happening for... I've got one case that goes back 1067.
Mm-hmm. Well, Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus saw a USO. I mean, so
he didn't see a UFO. That damn program on History Channel is really screwed up.
Really?
If you go to the Fordham website, they have a thing on the Columbus sighting, and I have it on my website, as a matter of fact, under historical figures. And all he says is that they saw a flickering light on the horizon, and it acted like a candle, bouncing around and going up and down. But that's all it says. It does not say a UFO. It does not say a mechanical contrivance. It didn't come out of the water. It was on top of the water, off in the distance, of course. Now, they still couldn't see land because of the curvature of the Earth. So they just saw a light dancing on the water on the horizon somewhere at night. So no big mystery there. There are a lot of strange things. The King of England, I saw some red thing which was seen by another ship as well. And then, of course, Thor Heyerdahl in 47 with the Kon-Tiki. I've got that just on the website in that same area, talking about this thing that came out of the water, looked like a circular thing, and it hovered in the air for a while. So Kon-Tiki, Thor Heyerdahl, saw this thing coming out of the water. So when you talk about recent, it goes back. It's just that most ufology, somebody must have said, okay, we got UFOs in 1947. Weren't there any before? Well, there have been a lot of researchers who have been doing nothing but that. And then people who are archivists, one of my cases in there is about a sea serpent in 1893. And 1893, sea serpent. Well, I've got it broken down with brackets all the way through. At one point, he's talking about the sea monster had 8 eyes. It was 150 feet long. It shocked the guys, et cetera, et cetera. Again, electrical field. Do you know of anything that's 150 feet long that shocks people? I mean,
electrical eel.
That's not 150 feet long.
Hey.
Needless to say, it doesn't have 8 eyes.
Right,
So
exactly.
The 8 eyes would probably be windows. We mistook it for windows. They were all terrified, needless to say, when this thing approached the beach. It's a very long article from the bay up in, it's one of the big bays along the California coast. And that's where this occurred. Now, the guys were only going fishing. There was like 7 of them or 6 or 7 of them. And next thing, they met a group of people who were the guys who do sightings for property.
Like a surveyor?
Surveyor, yeah, exactly. So they had a bunch of surveyors, and they had met them during the day. Well, that night they were all sleeping. That's when this whole thing about the sea monster took place. And the surveyors were there with them because they heard the noise made by this thing. And they were all looking at to see when this thing came close and towards the shore. So the thing is, you don't realize these old stories and the way they're described is not like I saw a UFO. They saw something else that scared the hell out of them.
Right.
So in any event, you've got to make interpretations from not only what they said, but also what they're describing. And a lot of times they are describing a UFO. It's just that in the water it doesn't look like a UFO as we conceive of it. It's something that's in the water and coming towards them. So therefore it's a sea monster. And on it goes. But no, there's a lot of old stuff, and they've been around a long time, and kind of willing to bet that they might have been here for, Lord knows how many centuries. And that, not to mention millennium.
Well, let me ask you this on a whole other tangent. It seems that something coming up out of the water and then flying away is a bit easier to pass off in the media as an anomalous event. Have you ever tried to get other ufologists to dig into this as the case for something really is going on here? I'm
a little. I didn't quite catch it.
Well, in other words, a normal UFO sighting, which is a light in the sky or something like that, a Leslie Kean, or even a dogfight with a general, from Iran or whatever, talking about I chased after this thing. I mean, there's still something more elusive even about that to bring to the media as your evidence that there are aliens here. Do you think that your work is actually more? I mean, because what else could come up out of the water and fly away except something that we didn't build?
Two things I can think of is one, flying fish, and needless to say, these things are a hell of a lot larger than flying fish. The other thing is a Poseidon missile or something of that nature. And no, you'd recognize either one. To call them a UFO, no, that would be a mistake. What these people are seeing is, and when they describe it, fits a UFO. I mean, it's not a different thing. Like I say, on and on again, it's the same craft. The thing is, they go into the water, they come out of the water. They've got an entirely different kind of. I hate the term propulsion system because it's always us with burning and exiting. Some kind of push, and that's not their means of propulsion.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at is, do you think that UFOs that come out of the water is automatically, because it's a UFO coming up out of the water and flying away, is better evidence of the UFO phenomena than a normal sighting where that doesn't happen? And if so, why isn't this pushed more, on Larry King or shows like that where people are, trying to give evidence to the mainstream media? Why not just look to this type of UFO activity and go, what else could do this?
Well, right now, Larry King, I understand, is the last season, wasn't it, or something like that?
Well, that's not really the point.
It doesn't matter. The whole thing is water, like I said before, was always kind of poo-pooed. You hold it off at arm's length and say, oh, yeah, that was a case, but who cares? But I've been stringing all these reports together. I have 1,165 cases so far. Now, I had 2 years off while I was writing the book, but I'm back in business again. So I still have papers all over here, different reports of UFOs coming out, going in. I have sailors that have written me, and they said, I was on this carrier, or I was on this destroyer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all different kinds of ships. And I keep wondering, why don't more people see them? He says, well, there's very few people usually on deck because the ship's moving at, roughly 40 miles an hour, I guess it is. I forget how many knots. But in any event, that's a bit of a breeze, to be playing on deck. So you're only there on deck for whatever specific purpose you're there for. So there's not a whole lot of crew topside, except on carriers when they're launching airplanes. But seeing these things are mostly lights underwater, solid lights underwater. However, there's a guy named Kaczynski out Midwest somewhere who has been campaigning, trying to get stuff on the Roosevelt, the USS Roosevelt, right? Because he saw one, and he said there were people on the deck. One guy, a friend of his, even drew a picture of it for the Defense Department. Yes, they're real to me, but they're no more real than like the one you brought up, Iran, with the dog fights. There's been several dog fights. There was a dog fight in China, too. Finland supposedly had one. These guys toy with us. They absolutely toy. They know the minute we got them locked on, bang, they break the lock and they're gone. You know, to me, the technology is unbelievable.
Well, what about just statistically? You know, you always hear UFO reports, 80 to 90 something percent are identifiable. Does that hold true for something that's coming up out of the water?
I don't have any figures on it. Like I said, all I'm doing is collecting the cases, so I haven't got time to play with statistics. I'm sure statistics could add up to anything, you know. But for what I've learned from this thing, it's easy for me to see why it's more real, because I don't. Ted Phillips is the one who does land trace cases. You know, burnt bark on trees, busted tree limbs, roots of grass that have been burned where the grass isn't burned, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And calcified soil, or soil that's been altered chemically somehow. And it's all due to the field around the UFO. They find branches that busted, but they're burned as well. That's because of the high energy. So, yes, Ted's thing is very apropos and very proof-worthy. The trouble is with water, I don't have the same thing. I can only do what people see. So I have to deal with that. And the thing is, I had 4 different groups, and it drove me nuts because I recognize 4 different things that UFOs are doing. Now, these are witnesses talking and telling me what they saw, you know, in reports, not to me personally. In any event, I couldn't group them together. Well, one night, like I said, I took aeronautical engineering. I did some drafting work in the old days. And so I said, I'm going to draw it just so I can see physically if there's any physical thing that'll pop out of it into my eyeball. Well, it did. And when I did, I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. To me, I just kept saying they're real. I've always been 50-50 myself on UFOs. I mean, they're wonderful stories, but they're stories. Well, this one, bang, it connected, and I said nobody could make up a fairy tale of these 4 things that are melded together, you know, or they all have something in common. And I found it that night. And it's the field. It's the field. It's operating in different aspects, and this group sees one thing, that group on a different case sees something else, and down the line. But they all have the field in common, and that's what draws them together. It's perfect. They're real. I have no doubt about it.
Carl, what would you say? I'll tell you mine after you tell me yours. What do you think the best visual evidence of UFOs interacting with water is?
Documentation. If you're talking documentation, Shag Harbor wins, hands down. Hands down.
Visual data, photographs, video, whatever.
Oh, no. It was at nighttime. The witnesses that lived there, Shag Harbor is a fishing village, very small. Mm-hmm. In any event, the witnesses, the kids in the cars were coming from 2 different directions and saw these lights coming down. Never dawned on them that it was a UFO. They thought it was an airliner crashing into the water. So they called the mounted police. Now, the mounted police in Canada, if somebody files a report, they have to investigate it, no matter what it is. Well, it didn't say that it was a UFO for starters. They didn't think it was. They thought it was an airplane crashing. Well, a mounted police officer was nearby, and he was directed to go and interview these guys. The mounted policeman saw the lights going into the water. The next day, they sent out boats. Like I said, they're all fishermen, so they sent out boats that night looking for survivors of the crash. Well, there were no survivors. The UFO, the lights, had actually gone underwater, so they assumed the airplane had sunk. So the next day, they had notified the Navy, and the Navy came out with some, I guess, a Coast Guard cutter or something, and divers to go look under the water where this whole thing happened. They didn't find anything, supposedly, anyway. But that wasn't the end of the story, because it turns out this UFO went up the coast underwater to Shelbourne, which was a top-secret military place, not Shelbourne itself, but the mouth of the where the water dumped out into the ocean. That was a sub-tracking base. You know, all the wires came in together at Shelbourne. So in any event, that's where the story actually began again, because they had tracked it all the way up from Shag Harbor through these underwater cables, and it was off Shelbourne. Now, they bring in the U.S. and Canadian Navy and surround the UFO, not for an hour, not for a day, but for a full week. A full week underwater surrounded by Navy ships. The only thing that screwed up the thing was that the Soviets came in with a submarine and trying to figure out why all these ships were gathered around this mouth of the river. And they went out to chase the sub away. Well, as soon as they did that, they kind of freaked. The water's only 60 feet deep there, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think it's 25 feet for the draft of the boat. And so you don't have a lot of operating room below. And so once they moved, the UFOs took off. They not there. They went underwater to, the Gulf of Maine, and there was seen coming out of the water. Maybe not the same ones. Maybe it was different, but they saw 2 UFOs coming out of the water. So in any event, the guy who researched this thing, Chris Stiles, he dug into all the newspapers and Freedom of Information Act. I met him in New Jersey once, and I said, Chris, how many pieces of paper you got, 10, 20? And he says, I've got a 4-drawer file cabinet full of Canadian and U.S. documents on this thing that doesn't exist. So 4 drawers of a full file cabinet. You want to picture how much paper there's in there?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, back to the original question for me was visual evidence-wise, photos, video, what do you think is the best for the evidence of UFOs interacting either in or out of the water?
None. Underwater photography, you'd have to be prepared for the thing being there, and there's not that much, you don't have any notification about whether they're going to show up. Ribicoff was a scientist. He saw something underwater, and it was photographed. It was a scientific vessel. And it turned out to be a ray, a stingray of some sort.
Okay.
But at first he had thought he said that the speed was constant, this, that, and the other thing. He compared it to some kind of a craft. So, no, that was no good. But I do have a case, the one in the field in reverse, where the guy was under it, touched it. So as far as contact goes, bang, you got it right there.
How about April 26th in 94, Ed Walters' ship over the Santa Rosa Sound that was sucking up water, multi-lobed object.
I've got that on my website, and what's his name? Bruce McAfee did the investigation. It's a Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
So trying to phony something up with that would be very difficult. Mm-hmm. But in any event, the UFO sucking up water is again a part of my thing with the UFOs, the physical end, and I have that in that paper on my website, Physical Influences of a UFO on Water. Sucking up water is part of the suction. It's kind of like it's high speed, it's high energy, and it's rotating extremely fast, and it's causing an updraft like a vacuum cleaner. Mm-hmm. And that's what's causing this thing. Now, the higher up it gets, it loses that vacuum. It's sucking air mainly, so you don't have the suction of water. And but the closer you get to the water, the more the suction acts on the water like a vacuum cleaner. Mm-hmm. And or if part of the UFO rotates, usually one part will rotate, and if it does, then it's causing like a cyclonic effect below it, and you got this rotation like a tornado or at sea or a water spout, and it does suck up water, but it's not sucking water up to get it into the craft. It's kind of like a byproduct. You talk about a prop wash on an airplane. Prop wash is not designed into the airplane. It's something that occurs, because of the propeller rotation. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with the UFO. It's the suction below wasn't intentionally there for that purpose. It's just part of the rotating field. in our atmosphere. In space, you wouldn't have a rotating the suction because there's nothing to suck.
Right.
Well, you talked about that you've sort of figured out what the mechanics are, what the physics are. Is this something that you could build?
No, not physically. I mean, I can tell about the rotation of the field and so forth, which I have, and I've expressed it in the book. As a matter of fact, you can go on to that physical influence page that has it, essentially what's in Chapter 2 of the book. I don't understand how the engine works that makes it fly. Keep in mind, they can turn the field off. They can turn the field off and still hover. Now, if they're hovering, there's something else that they're doing. The field is kind of like a separate entity than the entire power plant. So, in any event, the rotation of the field was the thing I was most interested in because it explains all the physical characteristics of what's going on with the water.
You know, when we talk about how people used to view this in the past as opposed to now, and now we look back and we go, well, they were probably talking about spaceships. For instance, the 1800s, when people were seeing airships, did people in boats who were reporting UFOs see these same airships? Did they see them coming up out of the water?
I'm not big on history myself. I take the cases if I get one with these kinds of reports in them. 17th, 18th century, there were a lot of things about strange things in the water or strange clouds that did strange things. Going way back into history, I'm sure there were UFOs around. I mean, I have no way of proving that, of course. But the thing is interpretation. When you're talking different technologies of then and now, we're talking two entirely different thought processes, you know? So what they saw would probably be interpreted entirely differently than what we interpret today now.
Well, I guess just in terms of saying that these are aliens from outer space, and you do include abduction research in your work, and as you know, abduction research, a lot of those accounts, in fact, arguably all of them, outside of Travis Walton, are pretty personal. Personalized. We're talking beings that speak our language and sometimes know us better than we know ourselves type of thing. And if we're talking about these beings having been here for thousands of years, how long do they have to be here and know us better than we know ourselves before they're not alien anymore?
Well, first of all, you're talking about them speaking our language. I don't believe that's the case. Most of the time it's telepathy. So these people are getting an image or something in place of speech. As a matter of fact, they said, I don't know how they talk to me. They just talk to me. So we're not talking language here. We're talking telepathy. And I am very big on telepathy. I mean, I don't research it or anything like that, but my mother had an experience during World War II that shocks us today, even, you know, when we talk about it. So I believe in telepathy. And the thing she had was, I'll tell you the story. She is of German extraction. So needless to say, during World War II, you can't talk to your relatives overseas, right? So in any event, she's cleaning the house one day when she had a vision. Now, she's not paranormal or anything like that. She's a very down-to-earth person. And she had a vision of a funeral, and she couldn't imagine what the heck was going on, but she did have presence of mind to write down the date and the time that it occurred. And she tucked it away in a drawer, hoping that when the war was over, she could call home and find out what was going on over there. So anyway, they did that. They went through the whole rigmarole at the end of the war, who was with this and what happened there. And then they asked her, well, what happened to you during the war? So my mother talked about this thing with the telepathy, about the funeral. So anyway, the sister in Germany said, what date was it? Bang. So anyway, she said, what happened on that date? And it was her mother's funeral. Somebody in Germany was thinking of her in New York, and without any radio transmission, nothing, she had gotten a view of the funeral from that person's eyes and brain. So, needless to say, I think we're all capable of telepathy, but we just kind of disregard it because we don't want our people reading our minds. So when we talk about people communicating, that's where I go. It's telepathy.
Have you ever had a paranormal or a ufological experience?
No ufological, no. Paranormal, no, I can't really say I have had anything along those lines. Except for the boogeyman, of course, when I was like 4 or something, But no, that's about it, No, I'm no paranormal. I'm just interested in the subject. I've been in aviation since I was 6 years old. I used to carve balsa wood blocks, but for airplanes, and so aviation. I finally retired from a major airline after working for 34 years for them. Aviation all my life. And of course, UFOs are a kind of aviation. Not really, but they're in the air and in the water.
So, Carl, I'm curious, when we're talking about the theory, which is extraterrestrials that are coming here basically because we're a source of water, it seems to me like not a reach. I'm not one to kind of dismiss the ETH as a possibility. It certainly is to me. But to look across the entire scope when you're talking about experiencer data, when you're talking about close encounters, when you're talking about submerged UFOs, all of these things seem to carry with them a little bit of what they refer to as high strangeness activity. And I'm curious, as far as the submerged UFO thing goes, how often do you come across an account that you either feel like, A, someone is holding something back because they don't want you to think they're nuts, despite the topic that it is, whether or not they're involved in it is usually irrelevant. When you're talking about something that is already considered somewhat taboo to talk about or a subject of ridicule, how often do you have someone come to you with an experience of having a sighting that involves a UFO in the water that also coincides with what I refer to as, quote, really weird shit that you can't necessarily attribute to the subject that we're even talking about? I mean, that the story just, it evolves into something truly, truly surreal and very altered states of perception, that sort of thing. Do you come across that at all when you're talking about the USO phenomenon?
Not me, because I'm too well acquainted with it. If somebody came up with a real hack story type thing, I'd be very easily to identify how bad it is.
Right.
Because I've got so many cases behind me that I know what to expect. I do have 2 or 3 cases, one involving a movie actor who was fishing with a friend that saw pinpoint waves underneath the UFO. I still can't explain that one. So that's kind of an anomaly to me. Of course, he was pretty close to the UFO, so he might have been able to be in that range where he could see something that others didn't.
Right.
But as far as, witchcraft or any kind of other garbage going in there, no. The stories are all generally along the very same line. I saw this come down and went into the water. I saw it come out of the water. I have a pilot. One of the cases in there, it's Puget Sound. That's what I was looking for before. Puget Sound.
Okay.
And this guy had he retired many years flying airplanes, never saw a UFO. So anyway, he's got a house with this huge bay window type thing, and so anyway, he sees something down at the end one day, and it's headed for the water. So he heads for the phone thinking there's a plane crashing. It goes into the water, but then while he's dialing, it comes out of the water. Then it goes back into the water. Then it comes out of the water. Then it goes back into the water, all the way past his window. It was repeating the sequence, in, out, in, out. It's kind of like kids playing in a puddles, or something like that. So in any event, here's this pilot who's definitely not UFO, and here he sees one when he's on the ground. and it's going in and out of the water. So, I mean, and that's not the only case of in and out of the water. Sometimes it's just like they're happy to find it, or whatever have you, and they're kind of enjoying playing in it, It's childish, but, I mean, we talk about being out in the desert and wanting a drink of water. You find an oasis, and you're ready to take a bath in it, drink it, and do whatever, so.
Yeah. When you're talking about the abduction phenomena in the way of this particular facet, can you tell me a little bit about how is the data collected? Is it direct recall, or is it mainly through regression hypnotherapy?
One case I know, Connections, that's Anna Jameson. I get these cases from books, by the way, usually. I'm not into regressive hypnosis or anything else. I just get them out of books, newsletters, this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
Well, I read her book because I met her in Washington, and of course, you're curious, so you buy the book, and next thing you know, bang, there's a page in front of me about water. And it wasn't specific. She said I wasn't even sure that I was underwater. However, there were other circumstances that drove me to the fact that she definitely was underwater. There's no question. I only have 3 major cases with this thing of the water being held away from the ship, and all of these abductees referred to it as a tunnel. Well, 2 of them anyway. One called it a tube, which of course in England is the railroad system through a tunnel. And those 3 all specified a tunnel. They were in a tunnel. They're looking at the curved sides of the field because it's coming up, going past the window, and then back in at the top. Well, they can't see where it is at the top, so they're just seeing curved walls. And that's the water being restrained by the circulating field. Now, you talk about the vision of something, bang, 3 of them right together, well, they're not in the same case. They're all 3 different cases. And each one is driving the same thing, a tunnel, a tunnel, a tunnel. There's no difference in there, except one says it was like soft sides. And the other one said it was like running water, very fast running water, which it is because the field's rotating and it's pressing against the field, so therefore it's pushing the water around as well. So, no, it's over and over again. It's the same kind of a scenario, you might say, in all the various aspects that they talk about. Bulging water. You ever see bulging water? Or a hole in the water? You can't make a hole in the water with anything except like a glass. You put a glass in the sink of water, yes, you've got a hole in the water, but that glass in the water would represent the field of the UFO. But that field is rotating. It's not a solid glass object or anything. It's rotating constantly, and it's moving water at the same time.
Let me ask you, getting just back to experiencers, have they ever brought it back home with them? Have they ever seen a UFO come up out of the water and then become abductees, for instance?
Wait a minute. Back up again. You're talking about the abductee coming back and experiencing?
No, I'm talking about anyone who's just had a sighting on a ship. Do they then, do these aliens then end up taking an interest in them? Do they report back that they have subsequently become abductees or had strange things happen in their lives after the sighting? Not
in general, no. As a matter of fact, I can't think of a single case. But however, that book I was referring to too, and again, it's on my website, free, the Antilles incident. These aliens were kind of ticked off with these guys, and they had one of these long boats over the side. They had to do some repair on the rudder, and evidently they picked up 3 or 4 of the guys and took them with them, which is kind of unusual for an abduction. They were kind of annoyed with these people, and I guess they said, we're going to show you. Normally, the abductee stories are always that they're returned, as far as we know anyway. We don't have proof that everybody who's missing gets returned. So,
and how many of these have you investigated yourself?
How many cases?
Yeah.
Well, the Loch Raven I did. I try to get any water reports I can. I had a friend of the family, as a matter of fact, in New York, shocked my brother-in-law and sister, and so I went to interview this friend of the family. I was only a kid when I knew her in New York, and she had asked about me. So anyway, they said, she asked him, what is Carl doing? So my brother-in-law says, oh, he's doing that crazy UFO stuff. So she pipes up and says, oh, let me tell you about the one I saw. Now, she went to college, taught was school in education and anthropology. And she wound up living on an island in the Pacific called Pitiloo, which is off the Admiralty Islands. And in any event, it was a very subsistent type living, berries, tree leaves, and whatever you could eat. And she says one night they were out there full moonlight, and this thing came from one end of the island, and all the natives were screaming, look up, And so anyway, as it came towards her end of the island, she saw it. And she said it had 3 lights on it, red, green, and white. Now, it wasn't an airplane, no engine sounds. It wasn't huge. It was like, I forget how I found out, but the measurements I got were about the size of my Ford Escort. And so it's kind of, relatively small, you might say. But it turned, and then it went into the water between Pitiloo and another island. And she says it was a reef. She says, I used to fish and do, a skin dive in there. And she says, it's only about 5 feet deep between the islands. So the natives had as soon as they saw the UFO going into the water, they figured, this is some kind of Australian airplane or whatever, and they went out for the rescue attempt. Well, the thing is, they got in their canoes, went to the reef, to the water, and they were searching all over the place. Whatever went into the water kept going. It didn't stop. So, yes, I did that case. I did that up in New York City. I did it also one by telephone and email with a guy in Maine who saw one come out of the water and hover above and then shoot away real quick. With his mother. 50 years after the event, his mother made him swear that he would never talk about it to the townspeople because they'd ridicule the hell out of him. And instead, he was trying desperately to file a report with somebody. Stanton Freeman, the sightings, which of course was way out of circulation by that time. And on he went. So he finally, Stanton Freeman gave him my name, and I did telephone conversation and emails with him. But he was very sincere about what he saw, and he says he worked in the Air Force, and he said it was as big as a 707, so, which was the tankers they had in those days. And so he was very adamant about the size, what happened, and he was just a young kid himself when it came out of the water.
Well, that is about all the time we have, but why don't you let us know, your book is UFOs and Water. Are we going to hear, or are we going to read more of these type of stories in it, or is it mostly, what is it? What is it mostly?
Well, that's my explanation about a lot of the things that they do with water, and I have it broken down, I can't give you chapter by chapter over the phone, but it's an encompassing thing. Yes, there are a lot of stories in it, not 1,165, though. And most of the cases I have are cut down to the little 2-3 lines to save space. If I put the whole case in, next thing you're going to have volumes, not a chapter. And so, yes, there are a lot of cases. They have the date it occurred. They have the location all over the world. These cases happen all over the world. And so it's a very interesting, it covers everything, just about everything that I can think of. So whoever comes after me has got to start.
Very good. And they can get that through your website, waterufo.net?
Right. Well, not necessarily through my website. It wouldn't be through me. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see UFOs and Water, and it says click here for book information and ordering. It explains everything about the book, and then at the last page is buy now, and it has my publisher, which was Ex Libris, and then it's Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. You can find it on Amazon.com easy, too, so.
Okay, very good. Well, Carl, thank you very much for sharing your insights into a watery craft. Well, I guess it's all the same craft, but just happens to be skipping along water.
Yes, thanks, Carl, very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
All right, thank you. Carl Feindt, ladies and gentlemen, Carl Feindt.
Hi, this is Ted Phillips, and you're listening to Paratopia.
Beautiful.
So the Jeff?
So the Jer.
That was Carl Feindt.
It certainly was.
Didn't he say that he invented the term USOs and then said he didn't like the term USOs?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right, or do I got to go back?
I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll listen and see. But yeah, that was not my cup of tea. I mean, first of all, I'm sure that a lot of people were like, "Why aren't they saying something?" Well, because you know what?
Saying something about what?
About some of the things that were said, which were, come on, are you kidding me? You can't draw the line here and see that there seems to be an awful lot of conclusions reached with absolutely nothing there.
Oh, yeah, but that's ufology.
Well, it was especially true here. I mean, like as in poster child for that. So, very nice man. Obviously sincere in his interest about what he's doing, but I think that part of my new, I don't know, thought process when it comes to this stuff is to stop being an antagonist as soon as I hear something that just doesn't ring for me, or doesn't ring, period. That relies too much on supposition. I tend to just let's listen to hear what they have to say. Let them present their side of this.
I think it's like anything else with if you were to talk to a scientist with a belief system,
yeah,
you just parse out the belief system from the data.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, for me, the most interesting part of the interview, bar none, was the guy literally swimming under one and touching it and putting his hands on it and said it felt like sand and rock, which I thought was pretty weird, pretty interesting. That is, unless he was swimming under a reef.
Like bioluminescent reef?
Wow, it felt like sand and rock. I find that interesting. If indeed he was laying hands on what he saw in the water or saw come out of the water or saw behave strangely, then yeah, that's a little weird. I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting that he could feel the sucking in and the blowing out of water out of this thing, which is interesting. The problem I have is whenever you mention something about, and this seems to be a common thread, is anytime you mention something about how many of these do you think are likely some sort of top secret marine project of some sort or something like that. I think everybody seems to immediately want to gravitate to, well, these things have been seen for, hundreds of thousands of years. But then preface it by saying that it's an interpretation of what's been written in the past. I decidedly have read online about Christopher Columbus's sighting a lot different than what he described it as being. Now, whether or not, if any of those are accurate, I don't know. But that's certainly one that we see in major media brought up quite a bit. And the problem is again, it's interpretative. If you're going after UFOs, then you're going to look throughout history to hear about flying shields and all matter of descriptions that you try to draw lines or correlate with a UFO sighting. I don't necessarily always think that's the best course of action with that sort of thing, unless it's really blatant, unless it's like really descriptive and non-poetic.
Well, here's the thing about that. This was the gist of my 1800s airship question. Those airships that people claim to see, I mean, oftentimes, more times than not, I think, there was sort of a deck on them, right? With beings that would wave at people.
Right.
So, would this come up out of the water?
Right.
If that's what people were associating with the UFO phenomenon back then, would you see a ship that looked like a dirigible come up out of the water and with people waving on it?
Right.
Be nice to have the answer to that.
Yeah, well, be curious, and I thought about asking him this, but then I lost my train of thought. But I'm curious if any of these USOs have ever surfaced and beings have actually stood up on top of it. Have beings been seen around them in the water? That would be a curious thing, because I heard a lot of mention of they and them and aliens, and to my knowledge, I didn't hear him say anything about beings ever being seen around these things, on top of them, in the water, what have you.
Well, it seems that he's taking from a lot of book sources as well, and some of those books are abduction books. And in fact, that's where he's getting all of his, beings associated with underwater UFOs would be abduction reports.
Right, yeah.
And of course, I noticed on his website, one of those books is Witnessed by Bud Hopkins, which is all but debunked. Well, not even but. Let's take that out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, so, you've got these questionable sources of that sort of data. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that.
Well, I do. Throw it out. I mean, I hate to sound like such a goddamn curmudgeon when it comes to this stuff, but again, it's just, for me, it's bar none, it's a fascinating phenomenon, especially when you're talking about UFOs in water. I mean, I remember, at least back in the 80s, a good 70 to 75% of all sightings took place around bodies of water, which is really interesting stuff. I mean, why? I remember at one point having a discussion with Bob Exler one night at his home, and Bob Exler, in case people who've just signed up for the show haven't been familiar with that, I mean, I met him doing an experiencer support group with Lee, who was just on the show not long ago, and Bruce Maccabee used to come to a lot of those. So I met Bob through all of those kind of channels. And Bob was a researcher you'd see online, or rather on TV, quite a bit back in the day. And he has since left the field, I think, in my opinion, relatively in shame. But he had said to me one day, he's like, well, everybody wants to draw the line to spacemen and that sort of thing. Well, what is to say that when we crawled out of that water so many millions of years ago, that part of us didn't stay in the water, and it would have millions of years of evolution upon us. So there's your vast technological advancement there. And that was his thought about it. And I thought about it, I was like, well, hey, what the hell do I know about marine biology? I have no idea. Sounded interesting, but the more that you hear about the USO phenomena and all of that, the more you kind of think about, I don't know, that for some reason, something to me rings of top secret military stuff, subs, air defense, that sort of thing. Do I think that we'd have the capabilities to repel water away from an object? Yeah, I don't think that's so much of a stretch. It probably is. I probably don't know what I'm talking about scientifically of what it would take to do that, but that seems like that's something we could do, whether it be with air, whether it be with magnet, whether it could have something to do with salt water or seawater. I don't know. That's just what it smacks of to me. Clearly, Carl was not up too much on the trickster thing, but one of the reasons I brought up Loch Raven Reservoir was after talking to George Hansen, I began to look back at some of the few files that I've left from the old days of Loch Raven Dam sightings, of which there are many. That's a pretty hot area, and it's a beautiful place. It is pretty rural. It's surrounded by suburbia. I don't think you'd go, so many miles in any direction from Loch Raven Dam and not run into a McDonald's or a mall. So it's centrally located. It's not horribly rural, although it does lead into some farmland and all of that. And throughout the years in that area, I had gotten a lot of UFO reports. Not only from Loch Raven, but also from adjacent areas like Glenarm, Maryland, and a lot of those associated too with water. What I found interesting when George came to talk to us initially about all of the things that seem to surround these paranormal events that we've talked about ad nauseum on this show, is that Loch Raven is very much that sort of marginal place, that anti-structural place, because as you might expect in any given area, This is a place where you dump a body. This is the place where you go to drink if you're underage. This is the place where you go to screw if you're underage. This is, this is just that kind of place. I mean, it's surrounded by suburbia and it's away from prying eyes. And so, there have been more than enough horrific traffic accidents in that whole area of Loch Raven Dam. Many people have drowned. Many people have been found there after murder scene, murders and what have you. So I look at all that and I go, wow, that kind of coincides with that. I haven't even been through there in quite a while now, but it seems to fit the pattern of that. And when I was listening to Carl talk about all of these different things, that's why I was kind of asking about the surreal nature or people who have gotten close. Have you ever heard anything that's been just so outrageous that you just have your hard time getting your head around it? And I would assume, based upon his answer, that when he hears those completely 100% forthright accounts, that he kind of almost dismisses them.
Yeah. He basically said they were all, I could tell a bullshit artist basically is what, he didn't say these words, but I can smell bullshit a mile away, or it sounds like he would put a stop to it as soon as somebody started saying something that he interpreted as witchcraft or silly, over the top, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean,
but this notion, this is something I brought up last week, but I want to really hit the nail on the head here.
Mm-hmm.
This notion that UFOs and these beings represent aliens is not because that's where our science goes. It's because I think you can draw the direct correlation that in the late 1800s, there was the debate about whether or not there were canals on Mars.
Yeah.
Our science fiction started, going that way, and our thinking started thinking about space. And then I think it was 1938 that War of the Worlds radio address happens, that people mistake fiction for fact of an alien invasion. And then 1947, Kenneth Arnold, the media, takes the flight dynamics of the UFOs that he sees, saucers skipping over water, and turns them into flying saucers.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this, misidentification of canals on Mars, right? Was the first thing.
Well, yeah.
And then you've got fiction number one, coupled with science fiction, coupled with mistaking a science fiction radio play for fact,
mm-hmm.
coupled with condensing a description of flight characteristics into a noun, flying saucer.
Right.
These are all mistakes. And through these mistakes of melding fact with fiction, we've come to aliens.
The theology of ufology.
Right? That's simple enough.
Right.
And it's only after that happens now that you get a Betty and Barney Hill, or you get, these abductors who are aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, it would have been, demons or fairies or what have you.
Right.
But isn't it interesting also, even channeling, which was always the spirit world, suddenly became about aliens as well.
Right.
So you're seeing this switch over to of a belief system, not based on our scientific rationalism or any of that, really.
Well, or even the data as it's actually the factual data presented in UFO cases. It's not even based upon that. Really, when you think about it. It's a far departure from that, isn't it?
It's funny. I just saw the movie Paranormal Activity 2.
Oh, no. I'm sorry to hear that.
I didn't see Paranormal Activity 1, so I can't really judge it against that. But, one of the things that it reminded me of, because they pressed the point a few times, is that demons, they create fear in you, and they want your attention, and so, they make this point several times. So, if you just ignore them, they'll leave you alone. It's pretty much what we say about this so-called alien phenomenon. The more you pay attention to it, it needs you to perceive it to exist here. It pulls itself in to this reality. Now, I'm not making the correlation between, aliens and demons, on the level that I'm saying aliens are demons, but the correlation, of sort of that mechanism is there. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more honest to say that there's a relationship, that those things are getting at the same thing, than to keep them separated as, one is complete bunk and the other is true.
Mhm.
I think they're both, in a way, both bunk and both true at the same time. The face has changed, but the mechanics is the same.
Right, the masks are changing, yeah. It's wearing different guises. But, I mean, that's something that I think we've been saying from the very get-go on this show, is that somehow, at least in my experiences, and I know to a pretty large degree your own, that these things seem to have some sort of desire to be acknowledged as real. And then once you acknowledge that as real, then it doesn't become about stories or campfire stories anymore. It becomes about, this is what it is. This is how I view it. And so at that point, it becomes a part of your reality. It's no longer a campfire story. And at that point, it seems that, and we've talked about this before, at that point, activity seems to ramp up. It seems to feed off the belief, or not the belief, but your acceptance of it, or your openness of it, the attention of it. Yes, the focus to it. And yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Question is, if and this is the bigger question for me. This is what I ask myself all the time. If this is capable of doing that through that sort of mechanism, if that's even what we want to call it, and we can do this, I mean, clearly it's a two-way street. So what else can we do? If this is able to happen, are there other avenues in which this is happening too, i.e. ghost activity, which I ask myself all the time, is Gettysburg truly haunted because so many souls left this earth there, or is it haunted because people go to see ghosts?
Well, that's a chicken and egg question, isn't it?
Well, what came first, right? I mean, I don't know. I wonder the same thing about Gulf Breeze. And we've said before that when I talked to Bland Pugh down there, I said, when did UFO activity really not become the thing anymore? When did it stop? And he said, when we stopped going to Shoreline Park, it stopped. And so ultimately, when they stopped paying attention, it stopped paying attention, or it stopped manifesting for them. I hate to say I don't know where to go with that, but I don't know where to go with that. That's just as it sits for me. That's kind of always been my mantra with this thing, is that the more that you give, the more you're going to get. How did we get into this from USOs? Jesus Christ. Can we ramble or what?
Well, because it's that it seems
it's the belief system thing. Yeah.
Well, it's the old Bud Hopkins creating outlier data of the things that we don't like, the things that seem to make less sense of this in terms of aliens from outer space. That's the thing that is unacceptable.
Yeah. Well,
but that's actually what the phenomenon is.
Right.
And in terms of even just the telepathy thing, I didn't really understand that because I've heard telepathy in English from these beings. So
yeah, you and me both, and so have a lot of other people.
But even just, I told you yesterday, I think it was, right, that 2 days ago, I had a lot of odd activity going on in my apartment, which was something sort of just flying around the apartment, and I would sort of catch it out of the corner of my eye, and I'd look over, and it's like in the bathroom or it's in the hallway or whatever. And then eventually, I'm sitting here watching TV, and I see it, or seemingly it, maybe something else, I don't know. But basically, it looked like a small ball or sphere of... well, I guess what we sort of decided was that maybe the best description is like a tinted glass sort of look to it, in that it looked like a solid object, like mercury or something like that, but it was sort of see-through. It was sort of...
chromic. Yeah,
chromic, but yeah. And so I see this thing before my very eyes shoot into, like, a little slit opens up in reality, like a tear in the fabric of reality, and it goes into that and disappears. I mean, that was the visual. I don't know that that's actually what happened, but that's kind of what that looked like. Now, what does that have to do with aliens?
I don't know. I see, whenever I hear that, I revert back to what Lee and I used to talk about in the old days, was how many things are a byproduct of them entering or exiting the reality that we are in. When I talk to Lee about... But even
that type of thing, what you're talking about, isn't as mechanical as a ship coming up out of water and shooting off into space.
Well,
to go back to its planet.
Yeah. Well, let me put it to you this way.
Because they found water, and they were excited to have water. They were jumping with glee and going, yippee, water! We can't just invent water. It's what is water? H2O, right? Isn't that pretty easy to invent when you're a high-powered alien?
We came for your water slide.
Why aren't they at Disney?
Well, here's the thing, and I thought about this today. When we had David Roundtree on the show, and I was talking to him about, at the condominium, I used to see strange things around the bathroom. I see strange things around the bathroom here in the house. What look like people or movement or shimmers or anything. I mean, even Lisa saw some things that look like a thin linen veil material. And he said, well, yeah, there's a lot of sightings around those things, especially in the kitchen as well, but not only the bathroom, but the kitchen. Any place where you've got running water. And so I thought to myself today, if this interview had gone a different way, I would have said, do you think that it's possible that if these things are not extraterrestrial craft and are not military projects of some sort, but are manifestations of some sort, are they using the energy of water, or are they using, or whatever this presence is it using water as some kind of medium in an effort to manifest itself? What do you think of that?
Like a water spirit, like a sprite.
Call it what you want.
Well, how about call it? What would be the mechanics of that? How would that happen? And don't say splash. These are not mermaids.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's, I mean, clearly you've got fresh water and salt water involved in this, but nonetheless, it's still water. If water is, I mean, obviously, you know, when you're talking about moving water, you're talking about, there's definitely, is that kinetic energy? Am I right in saying that?
You are asking a failure of science, my friend.
Well, me too. But, you know, you're talking essentially energy of water moving. And so, you know, when you're talking about water moving and you're talking about salt water, does salt water not conduct electricity? Am I wrong?
You are talking to a failure of science, my friend.
This is where we need listeners. Hi, guys.
Hey, everybody. You pay for this now. Or you get dumber the more you pay.
Right. No, I'm just saying, I'm throwing out the hypothesis here. What if whatever this is using water as some sort of medium? What if what is coming out of the water is water? And so, you know, if it gets up and it flies away, what's to say it's really flying away and not just completely dissipating back into water? I don't see anything stretchy or elastic about that theory any more than it's aliens from another planet.
Oh, I do.
Okay, fine.
I think you're alone on that boat.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way. I mean, if you're looking at spirits or ghosts or manifestations of something like that happening around a bathroom and a kitchen, then what say about, a lot more water than that? I mean, come on. What is so far-reaching about that?
Well, here, I'll help you out in a weird sort of Jeremy Vaeni way.
Okay.
So what you're talking about in terms of the kitchen and the bathroom is converting water to energy in some way. That's what we do every day. We're mostly made of water. Mm-hmm. So human existence is founded on converting water to energy.
Okay.
So what's to say that there's not some other way to do that other than through digestive tract? You're welcome.
Okay. Well, I don't get what you're getting at with that. I was saying find some sort of science that water can be converted to energy, and then it's like, oh, that's right, organisms do that all the time. That's how we live. We're water-based organisms. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about more like how does a tub of salt water turn into a flying saucer?
Well, not in terms of the kitchen or the bathroom.
Well, I mean, if you let me ask you this: did your chromic orb come out of a glass of water and fly into your toilet? Because you've got USOs in the house. If you do,
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I mean, I'm just chucking that out there. I don't know how that would work. I don't know what that would mean, but I mean, clearly, if you're going to talk about energy and water, there's a lot of energy in the ocean, clearly. And if you've got some phenomena out there that is in tandem with us working some kind of two-way street of manifestation, then, of course, if you consider that a lot of UFO reports are near water, forget being in the water, forget USOs, forget that, say just being near water, then, I could see it as, maybe they're using this as some kind of medium to manifest something here. By the same token, there's a lot of UFO reports around high tension wires. How much of that can you put off to high EMF ratings that are affecting perception of the brain or people with acute sensitivity to that? I don't know. But is that electrical energy coming from a high tension wire or whatever power grid you want? Is that something, a nuclear power plant? Are all these things just basically mediums to manifest something?
I want to know why somebody like Bigelow or any bazillionaire who's interested in the subject doesn't do a study to sort of find where in the water most of this stuff is happening. Because there have to be water hotspots, I imagine. And then just put a satellite over it and take some pictures and just wait.
Well, Mr. Bigelow, we'd like to have you on the show as soon as possible, but I think the answer to that is we don't know that he hasn't, because he doesn't really share very much. Is there hotspots in the water? I mean, certainly Gulf Breeze back in the day, there was a lot going on involving the water there. Shag Harbor's kind of as far as I know, is a one-off. It's not really my chosen case of interest, but Gulf Breeze certainly is. I don't know. I mean,
I'm going to take exception to one thing he said also, just in terms of UFO
just one?
reports. Well, just in terms of even on his own terms. Just in terms of even on his own terms. That's right. That was a sentence. He said that as far as photographs go, people aren't really prepared to see it, on the decks of boats and things like that.
Yeah.
But what about people underwater? Aren't divers usually equipped with cameras that are rolling at all times?
I don't think so. I mean, but certainly if people were out on a boat ride, you would think they would have a camera. A lot of people would have cameras on a boat. Certainly on a cruise ship, a lot of people would have cameras. Yeah, that's why I was asking, like, what did he think was the best visual evidence of this sort of thing? I mean, definite interaction with a UFO and the water. And, and for me, I mean, that's always going to be the Gulf Breeze stuff. I mean, when you're looking at that one, which is the water spout UFO from 94, that whole series of pictures, which later then the same craft was seen interacting with a U.S. fighter jet. So that to me, just because I held them in my hands and actually looked at them, those were clearly to me, and I preface this by saying I did not examine them firsthand or anything like that, other than to hold them in my hands and look at them for quite a while. They certainly look like genuine photos to me. I could not readily say, how would you fake that? And there was interesting points about that as far as I know, there was still points about that particular, the water spout sighting, that I don't think have been talked about publicly yet. I don't know. And I'll write Bruce about that, and we'll bring it up on the next episode if it's okay to talk about, because I want to make sure I got my story straight with that. But I mean, clearly for me, that's one of the best ones, showing something actually down on the water with either A, a tube going into the water, or B, some sort of siphoning going on that is tubeless, that is, just like some sort of, I don't know, like a funnel, upside down funnel cloud looking thing going on underneath it. And you can clearly see the disturbance of mist near the water line or foam. So clearly this thing is interacting in the water. Other than that, I have not really seen any particularly great interaction with water UFO visual data. that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Me neither. But then,
which seems weird.
I don't know anything. I'm not even a ufologist.
Well, I mean, it seems weird to me that there wouldn't be more.
For some reason, I still don't think he got what I was saying about this, but doesn't it seem like this would be the best set of data to present to the media as, look, something real is happening here? You've got an object coming up out of the water and flying away. And like you said, we don't have anything that can do that. Mm-hmm. So isn't that less controversial than a light in the sky or a dog chase with what Phil Klass could say is Venus?
Yeah, and I got what you're saying in that it's the methodology of the entire sighting. It's the coming up out of the water and flying away, as opposed to just seeing an object in the sky, which could be anything from a star to an airplane to whatever. Yeah, you would think that would be the case, but I don't know. USOs seem to be like the forgotten bastard stepchild of UFO sightings. I mean, you don't you hear Shag Harbor and you think, okay, and you hear about, maybe every once in a while you'll hear about Grand Bethune sighting, or maybe the odd off UFO hunters about USOs. But you don't really hear much about that as far as, I don't know, not with the consistency of things being seen in the air. So I don't really know. I mean, obviously that Carl's spent a lot of time gathering these things, but I don't know. It seems like to me there's a lot more visual evidence. There's a lot more compelling radar data, that sort of thing, than there would be with the USO thing. I would think it would be harder to collect data. I mean, I know sonar would work, but sonar, would that always reflect correctly? Would that be as accurate as radar data? I don't know. So that's a good question. I mean, you would think it might be a little bit more compelling, but is there visual data to back it up? Certainly the naval cruisers would be the best place to start with something like that if you're really going to put a case together. For, like you were saying, a Larry King show or something like that. Certainly that'd be the best place to start.
Well, on another note, Jeff, I am coming to your place this weekend, and we're going to go to Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Now, you had said you want me to bring a camera, and you want to film something, and maybe release it to the subscribers.
Correct.
Just our little thank you gift. What exactly do you want to do? We haven't even really talked about it.
I don't know. Maybe we'll just go to Friendly's.
Hey, I'm down with that.
Ice cream.
Down with that.
Well, I think we're gonna stop in and see Mark Nesbitt and see if we could talk to him for a little bit. I'm not sure if he's going to be there, so I can't promise that. But aside from that, we're going to go up. I think we're going to go up fairly early, maybe around noon, 1 o'clock, and we're going to visit the places that we're going to go at night. So we're going to film, say, Devil's Den. We're going to film Triangle Field. We're going to film at Spangler Spring, and probably maybe around Culp somewhere. But then when we go back at night, you'll kind of, I don't know, have a little bit of a lay of where we are, and maybe we'll try and do a couple EVPs with our good friend Snake Oil's Ghost Whacker 5000 apparatus that uses only a large coil wrapped around a like a reel-to-reel tape reel.
You know what else we should do is give a tour of your house.
Oh, that'd be great. Lisa will love that.
This is where the guy in the hood sat me down on my floor.
Sure, we could do that.
Here's the fart chair. I don't know if we could get this together for this weekend, but I'm sure at some point we could, because you seem to be a car mechanical kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
But can we get, like, I don't know, 3-4 car batteries, put them in a circle at like a paranormal hotspot, maybe have me meditate or something, and just turn the camera on and see if, we manifest something? These things drain energy from batteries, right? So maybe we'll form a little vortex.
Well, it's about the most harebrained shit I ever heard, but yeah, we could do it. No,
but
actually,
it should work, right? Hypothetically.
Well, hypothetically, who the hell knows? We don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, we could try that. But David Roundtree mentioned to us, did I have a plasma ball? And I do. I've got a very large one. I'd be real curious to see if we could rig up some kind of battery unit to that, and perhaps fix that to an outlet that I can plug this thing into, and we can run it in the field and just see what happens. I'd be curious just to see what happens with that.
What did he say might happen?
Well, he said essentially it discharges a lot of energy into the air. And he told me to take it down at the house and just run it and see what we get. So maybe Friday night when you come down, if we can stay up till dead time, 3 a.m., we'll set that pup out on the coffee table and just let it run and see what happens, see if we notice anything. And we'll run cameras. That'd be interesting. And I would definitely want to focus on the hallway near your room.
Yeah, I definitely am down with whatever we do to heighten the manifestations near my room right before I go to bed. I think that would be a great idea. Thanks.
You're welcome. But if we could take it out in the field and run it off some kind of portable power, I think that would be terrific to try that and just see what happens. And if not, maybe I'll take a run by the electronics store tomorrow and see if they don't have something that is like that runs off batteries, because I know they have much smaller ones that do. There are also plasma discs that we can get that I have a couple that do run off of batteries.
But wait a second. Getting back to me and my genius for a second. How is that not genius if these things drain batteries to have a circle of car batteries to form like a "help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope" type hologram? A ghostogram.
I think if you go from the standpoint that a lot of paranormal investigators have their batteries drained when they go to digital cameras and film cameras drained, kind of I can understand where you're coming from a little bit. My thing is I want to discharge that shit into the air. I actually don't want just some sort of field coming off of a battery, which I would think would be somewhat low level. I'd rather see something like a Van de Graaff.
Oh, I was thinking that's what would happen. No?
A car battery? You think a car battery is going to act like a Van de Graaff?
Well, no, I don't know. I don't know what a Van de Graaff is, but
Van de Graaff is the big static electricity generator that has a large ball on the top. You've seen them before. They look like a large phallic apparatus, and you plug them in, and I'm
down. I don't care about that. I'm down for an actual manifestation of a ghost of some sort that has drained the energies to the extent where it then appears right there.
Right. Well, I mean, when you're talking about using a Van de Graaff or something like that, that's exactly the premise behind that, is you're throwing large amounts of energy, electricity into the air, which is, apparently, I mean, according to theory, is what these things would suck up to try and manifest themselves. Yeah, we could try that. I mean, I could even try and find someone who's got a Van de Graaff. We'll take it with us. I mean, if it can power it off of a car battery, the old 89 Thunderbird will get a workout. I don't mind trying that if we can swing it. Where would I get all those car batteries? Yeah, I don't know. I can check with Dad and see what he's got. But if we bring them all back drained, he's going to be pissed.
But will he? Would it have been worth it?
Not for him.
Oh, never mind.
No, I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, look, we can try anything. I see doing something like that at Spangler's, to be honest with you, as remote as that is, and as few people as seem to walk around there.
But if we stay up till 3 a.m. on Friday, are we really going to make it to that field? Or do you want to go there at night anyway?
Well, yeah, we want to go there at night. So
either way, there's going to be time for friendlies, is what you're telling me.
Yes, Jeremy, we'll get you your ice cream.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we can see what we can get together that might throw some electricity into the air and see what happens. I don't know about car batteries, but I certainly would like to try the plasma ball and see what happens. If I can figure out how to run that, then yeah, that's a good possibility. But I'd like to run cameras. To be honest with you, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but you've said every time that you've come to stay here at my place that when you sleep in your room that you hear things. And so I really wouldn't mind running a cam overnight in your room just to see what it is.
So I can't sleep in the nude? Or can I?
You do that in my house? You
what?
Bastard.
No. I barely sleep in your house, let alone in the nude. I could be ready to run out of there any moment. Are you kidding?
Is it really that bad?
Jeff, come on. You sound like the scariest person on the planet.
Jesus
like
Christ.
everywhere you move, you're haunted. What are you talking?
Sorry, it's not my fault. It's your fault. You make me do this.
And then I get some dude saying, "I can be strength." And it's like, okay, great.
That's right. That did happen here, didn't it? Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to do a little mini investigation here at the house, that's fine. But I think if we stay up till 3, we're probably not getting up till 10 or 11 the next day. That means we get to Gettysburg probably around 1:32, which is plenty early enough. We got plenty of daylight at that point. We will have to check and see when the park actually, when they throw us out. We'll have to check on that time because I know come fall and winter it does change. But I think we'd be okay. I would highly expect it to be, shall we say, a little active on Saturday, being the night before Halloween.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And you'll be staying in your room here on Halloween.
Would you quit saying that? Stop reminding me. Stop reminding me that I'm making the same mistake every white person in a horror movie makes, which is, oh, I'll stay.
And you'll shut the door.
I'll stay a floor away from every other human being and the dog with my door shut. Yeah, no problem.
Right. Well, the dog's got a whooping cough, so you'll know if it's her. But yeah, I mean, we could definitely try some stuff here at the house. I mean, it's Halloween, for God's sakes. It's allegedly the time of year when the veil is most thin, right? So
Can I sleep with you and Lisa?
No.
Okay.
Cody and his girlfriend will be going with us. My son and his girlfriend will be going with us to Gettysburg, and unfortunately, I would let you sleep on the couch, but she'll be on the couch. Cody will be in his room. We'll be in our room, and
oh, perfect. Nothing will happen to me if there's another person down there.
Right. So you won't be alone down there. She'll be there, except that, of course, Cody will be unable to respond to your cries for help because I'm having him handcuffed to his bed. Yes. So anyway, yeah, we can do that, and I think it'll be interesting just to see what we get.
You know who else would handcuff Cody to his bed is David Jacobs. Oh, sorry.
You know, that's just not right.
That's just inappropriate.
It is inappropriate.
Completely untrue what I just said. A fabrication.
Yeah. Jesus. Shall we say goodnight then?
Good night, Paratopia. Until next week, where our guest will be Kim Carlsberg.
Kim Carlsberg.
And then the week after that, our guest will be, Wouldn't You Like to Know?
No. That's the one that you're going to turn white and shake for. That's right.
You and me both, America. Earth. All right. Well, Jeff, it's been fantastic, as always. Thank you again, Carl Feindt.
Yes, thank you, Carl.
You survived the hot seat. I don't even know what that means.
Well, let me just say this before we go. Carl is a very accommodating guy, very nice guy, and a pleasure to talk to. You know, one of the bad points about ufology is everybody is, and myself included, being one of the most guilty parties of this the past so many years, you know, jumping in each other's shit just because we don't see things the same way. But ultimately, there's got to be something to be gained just from talking to all parties and, you know, kind of evaluating their belief systems based on whatever they're basing them on. So Carl, you know, you're a great guy. We appreciate you coming, and you're welcome back anytime. You know, we just have very different views on what's going on, and I think that's okay.
Yes, and of course that has no bearings on his book, most likely, which is about UFOs and water.
Yeah.
Anyway, good night, Paratopia.
Good night.